everyone, and welcome to the Launch Gravy Podcast. I'm Larry Weber, and I'll be your host here. Launch Gravy is our online resource where we bring together industry innovation, expertise, and education to help businesses like yours launch products and features that resonate with their users. Our mission is simple but ambitious: to make product launches easier and successful for emerging and growing organizations. Each week on the Launch Gravy Podcast, we're going to roll up our sleeves and explore the intricacies of product management and marketing by interviewing industry practitioners and thought leaders who bring unique perspectives as we uncover not only what has worked and what has not, but also those golden nuggets of insight that we all can learn from. So I'm super excited today to introduce our first guest, Devin Maguire, to our show. Devin, thanks so much for being here today.
Larry, really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, awesome. So let's get to it, right? You are a senior product marketing manager at ArmorCode. Can you tell us a little bit more about your role and what is ArmorCode, right? And why is it important to know what ArmorCode is?
Sure, yeah. So ArmorCode's a pioneer in this application security posture management space. So at a kind of high level, we're all about helping companies reduce risk by creating clarity out of what's really become very complex security data and then optimize their remediation efforts. So, software development's changed a lot. There are a lot of tools to help you kind of test software and find issues. But unlike kind of those testing tools, we're really all about integrating with the entire ecosystem. So we have 230 plus integrations. So we ingest all your security data, distill that down at kind of the fewest, highest impact tasks for developers to take action on, and then we kind of streamline those remediation processes. So how can you minimize risk with the least time, effort, and cost? That's what we're all about. So our primary users are security teams, but it's how do we kind of risk, and developers are asked to do a lot. So with the kind of fewest remediation tasks, how can you have that best security posture?
Got it. So like a synergy between the security teams and the developers at their level.
Yep, absolutely.
Perfect. So product marketing, we're going to dig into kind of your life, your role within ArmorCode, and also your past. But get us up to speed on this. Tell us a little bit more of your origin story, how you got here, and like what you're working on.
So my kind of career path was maybe a little atypical for product marketing. I started off in consulting. So I worked for a very small firm that really specialized in strategic positioning and messaging for really small to medium-sized companies from a range of industries, primarily technology and software, but also some like med tech and manufacturing in the Boston area. So those are the industries around here. But really from right out of college, I was working with C-level executives on some of their biggest challenges. Now, granted, they were C-level at smaller companies. It's a little bit different when you get into these larger organizations. But I really realized how systemic the challenge was of how do we position and message ourselves to the market. A lot of these companies had talked to them and they'd say, we've got really great products, we just don't know how to message and sell them. So it would eventually come down to they thought they had the best product for a certain population of people. And so the challenge was, all right, how do we convince them of this truth? That for this audience, this solution meets this need, and it's at a fair price. And so if they don't select your product, then we really fail to convince them of that truth. So woke up to that need, and then also just saw the power of what happens when you do that, and when you really articulate that, when you do connect with a customer pain point and need. Yeah, I was in consulting for a while, ended up going client side with one client actually, and then been in security for a few years now.
Definitely lots going on. So specifically in the cyberspace and kind of what you're working on from a product marketing, it's always a challenge. You have experience in the consulting side of it, but it's always a challenge to start digging into why security matters, why it's important for you. As we all know, like you have the security teams are like, hey man, like we're coming down, we need to lock things down. And then you got the developers that want to move fast. And so there's always a little bit of a tension there between them. So as a product marketer, how do you keep everyone happy? How do you bring this together? How do you launch? So maybe a question for you specifically is like, in your day-to-day, what is the biggest challenge, man, you're facing right now? What do you wake up to like, man, this is where it's at?
Yeah, there are challenges from an internal company perspective, and then there are challenges from a external market perspective. So I think from a market perspective, ASPN's a pretty hot space right now. I think there's a consensus that there's way too much security data, way too many tools. There's this movement towards consolidation, integrating data into...
Real quick for our listeners, ASPM. ASPM, what's it stand for?
Application Security Posture Management, which honestly, that's the challenge. Consensus on what the problem is, but there isn't consensus on how to solve it. And more than any other industry I've worked in, cybersecurity is really confusing. And I think it's both difficult for marketers and companies to communicate their positions, their messages. It's also really confusing and difficult as a buyer to be like, all right, this is my problem. I've got 10 people who think that they know how to solve it. What's the right solution for me? So I think that's one of our challenges is amid all this confusion, how do we provide that beacon to say, all right, you have this problem. This is what your security ecosystem looks like. We really think we have the best solution for these reasons.
Yeah, it gets me. And I wanted to derail from asking the question on the problems and the challenges,
No.
but you kicked it off in my own head. It's a level of the job and the role of the product marketer is education. And so educating specifically the right people, the right personas, but educating what the challenge is, what the problem is, but also what's going on in the market, what's going on around you. Because not every customer, not every company knows, right? That knows those threats. They know what's going on. They know what's the art of the possible and what they should be doing or not doing. And a part of it comes on to us as marketers to dig into that. So anyway, that was just one thing kicks off anytime we start talking challenges specifically in cyber, man, it's like education.
Yeah. And like internal education, I think bringing people up to speed on new products and capabilities in a kind of rapidly evolving landscape. I think enablement's always a big challenge indeed. Some of that product marketers, I think that's a big part of our role is educating the market, educating our organizations, being on top of all these things.
I guess it always goes back to you think about marketing and think about, hey, we could write something down on a piece of paper, even from product manager's perspective. Here's the product. Now you got to enable an army of people to go sell it if you're that sales model, or it has to be good enough so that a customer can knock on the door and be like, hey, this is what I need. This is what I want. I'm going to be self-service. And it's that customer enablement as well as a sales internal enablement as well, depending, of course, on your go-to-market model.
Yep, very much.
All right. Like one of the things we're Launch Gravy, it's all about uncovering the nuggets. And I knowing you have gone through a bunch of launches in your career, let's dig in a bit and walk me through a launch that you've gone through, one recently if possible. And what are those nuances about it? What were those learnings?
So a year ago, April, I helped launch a kind of generative AI secured coding product. So it was a really exciting launch to work on. I think they just acquired this technology, and there were really these questions around, will developers let AI touch their code? Like, will they ever be accepting of this? And then with ChatGPT, that conversation just shifted so quickly. And we had a head start on the market, but it was really, we had this kind of narrow window of opportunity. How do we capitalize on it? So it was a very complex launch just because it's a tier 1 launch. It involves the entire organization, everything from product and engineering. Obviously, we integrated it with an event. We need to get legal review and sign off. All of a sudden, we're recommending code changes. What are the legal implications of that? Pricing, how do we package it? So it was like a full scale launch, but it was really good timing for that product. It was really exciting. We got excellent PR and kind of pickup. We launched at the RSA conference, so we were like a top 20, whatever launch for that event. And then sustaining that excitement post-launch among customers and building pipeline. So there's so much to dig into.
No worries. And so like you said, tier 1 launch, right? So this is like one of those big boy launches, right? Like a new product, it's not just, hey, we know it's here. We're introducing something really new to the market, and it's going to take a full court press from the entire organization to drive this thing. So like all hands on deck launch, right?
Yeah, and those are the ones that are fun to talk about because it is like, all right, anytime you get to talk about the paradigm shift or, things that weren't possible before are possible now, and you really get to educate the market on something that's new, like that's exciting. I'd say that those are the exception rather than the rule. Sure, they're the fun ones to talk about, but I think it's important that even for the lower tier launches, ideally, you're launching something because it's new and you're educating people who care that it's new. A lot of people might care when you're releasing a Gen AI secure coding product that's brand new and part of the Gen AI zeitgeist. But when you're releasing support for a new language, there's a population that really cares about that.
Yeah.
And sometimes these feature launches, we think like, all right, yeah, we're not going to need to involve everyone. We might not even, it might be free or just part of the package, but making sure that you connect with the audiences who really do care. That's critical to every launch.
Yeah, now you get me going on this too, because like the tier ones, right? Like they're big and they're the big focus, and everyone wants them because they're going to move the needle in theory and get some excitement. They're the ones that are like the PR launches, right? But are they necessarily going to always be the customer focused ones, the customer obsessed launch? Getting, let's say, a new language, development language included, and now you have 100,000 developers that have been clamoring for this, but it might not be as sexy on the front end, but it's going to help your business. And so those are the lower tier launches, but man, they're gold. So I agree. You don't want to hide those or shove those under the rug. And there's different ways to go to market with those and get people excited.
Yeah.
But I don't know, sometimes those feature launches are the delivery of what's been promised. And it's important to make sure that those are highlighted as well. All right. So digging into this stuff. So you got this big launch, you got big fancy AI in front of it, which, oh my gosh. So everyone's listening, a little bit of added pressure, right? Tell me, man, what went well and what didn't go well? Every launch you can't say it's all roses. Of course, there's some wounds and some battle scars from this. So like what went well and why, and maybe start on the positive, and then let's get into, man, what sucked? What's hard or what messed up?
Yeah, what went well? Yeah, starting with the positive, like it really was a really perfect timing. So it generated a lot of awareness and buzz around it. From like a launch execution perspective, we had a virtual launch event a week before. That really tied in perfectly with generating interest and awareness at the RSA event. From that perspective, really cool. Like we got to make some awesome demos. I think we had some pretty engaging content. So that was all positive. Some of the bumps and bruises and learnings being fairly new and needing to the company. We had some misinformation within the company, even from high ups, that it's tough to change a first impression, or if you get some misinformation. We were saying we were training on this massive data set, which in reality, like we weren't, and it was a good thing we weren't. We were really doing kind of ahead of its time, responsible AI, like a highly
a little bit of smoke and mirrors on this one.
Yeah, it was just, I think obviously you want to differentiate, and you think, oh wait, how do we differentiate our AI? Like we got a ton of data. And it's like, all right, but that's one way, but also that comes with a lot of security concerns. Whose data are you using? What are the consequences of that? What are the security implications of that? And certainly when you're talking AI for security applications, that's top of mind. There were some missteps where like we had traded on trillions of lines of customer code. No, like that's not helpful. That's not accurate. That's not true. That's harmful. It's filtering that out and getting back to the reality of this was a highly curated data set. It was very responsible AI. That's the one bump bruise that will always kind of stick out and be a learning point. There are plenty others.
So how about some more of the good things? So what were some of the other things in here? I don't know, maybe maybe telling the audience, what were those things like, yeah, wow, this is a learning from this. This was something that went well, and I wasn't aware necessarily that this was going to be important or this was going to be a factor in it.
Yeah, so like surprise things. There wasn't anything that was like super surprising. I think there's knowing the full gamut of materials that you're going to need. I think, there's obviously creating that initial excitement when you do a launch, and then that quickly follows with, all right, I need some validation or proof, having that catalog of follow-on materials and diving into audiences who care about, all right, how are you training this model? Having those materials, technical white papers, stuff like that, sustaining that conversation and that interest through the journey.
You're bringing up an important concept. I think some people not to forget about, depending, people in the trenches really know this, but look, there's a pre, there's a during, and a post. You mentioned the big fancy launch event. It's yeah, let's make sure this launch event happens right now and dig into the virtual event and all that kind of goodness and how that was affected. But there's a lot of stuff that has to happen ahead of time. There's a lot of pre-launch things. And I have opinions on this. I've been in scenarios where, oh, good God, there's like nothing going on and it's just, Larry, go launch. You're like, what? Versus it's structured organizations where we have things like PRFAQs and like AWS is really good about this. You don't even go to market unless you know what the heck you're building. And it's based on the customer need. So goodness there. Can you tell me a little bit of maybe some of these from these launches that you've gone through or launches in general? Let's talk through some of the pre-launch activities. What do you see as essential that you've run across so that maybe for you and your organizations?
Yeah. So PRFAQ, that's something I learned from you. But I think it always has to start with the question of, why are we launching this? Is this delivering value? Why are we prioritizing this over other things? And that's something that product marketing and that's part of the broader strategy of the organization. And really the question is, can we make that ICP statement of, all right, this is the best product for this audience at a good, fair price? Can we make that argument stronger, or can we make it true to a broader ICP audience? So that's the lens I look at products and launches.
Real quick, acronym soup stop, ICP, because not everyone's going to know what ICP
Ideal
is.
Customer Profile.
Ideal customer profile. All good. No, marketers are going to get this, right? But some folks that are new to marketing and new to this, like there's a lot of terminology in here. And part of our goal is to demystify what we can, right? So developing the ICP is also an important process here. There's a lot of time and effort goes into that.
Oh yeah. Like we could have a whole conversation on ideal customer profile. Like I think I feel as product marketers, we tend to observe marketing and kind of obsess on marketing as consumers. At least I do. Like I'm always looking at product launches, and there was just the Hyundai Ioniq N came out, which is it's an electric vehicle, and you think every car company needs to get into electric vehicles because regulations are going that way. But they simulated that it could be a manual car experience. I'm like vaguely a car guy, but I like my manual shift, whatnot. But it's completely fake. Like they faked this kind of, in some ways, inferior experience where you have a torque curve and you can bog it down if you don't shift correctly or whatnot. But their ICP is car enthusiasts who are getting forced into EVs. And I think it's just super interesting. There are all these EVs coming out, but it's something that's a little bit remarkable. It's a little bit different. And I think as marketers, we have to look at, all right, what are those opportunities? What are the unmet customer needs that we can really attach ourselves to and actually get noticed and do something that's a little exciting and different in the market? Yeah. And I think those opportunities are there all the time if you're just a little bit creative, think a little bit differently.
Yeah, the focus on the customer aspect and understanding the trends, that's always wicked important. But getting back into the whole pre-launch here. So understanding the customer, understanding that ICP profile. Okay, now what? What are those other things that stood out for you? It'll be let's make sure that we get this right.
Yeah, I mean, I think of at least half of product marketing, I feel is project management, especially for these tier ones where you're working with customer success and demand gen and sales and enablement, BDRs, legal, analyst relations. Are you briefing analysts on this capability throughout its development and at launch and post-launch to make sure it's on their radar? There are a lot of pieces and parts to a launch that if you don't think about them, either you're just going to fall down or be scrambling, or they'll just go by and you'll kind of miss that piece of it.
So, quick question for you specifically on this one, just because I'm curious with the whole AI movement and people are, oh, AI this, AI that. I mean, companies, man, they put .ai at the end of anything now. It's like my dog is AI, right? Which it's always interesting now as a marketer as you see like all the Gen AI stuff that people are pushing out the door and it all looks the same because you know what it's coming from. Not to go in a different direction on this, but how was it when you did this launch, right? This is roughly, you said about a year ago.
Absolutely.
Like what was like when you're talking, maybe you can talk through a little bit of what AI in the realm of analysts and then also the sales team, right? Because it's, maybe attached to something good, but it's something a little different.
Analysts, it depends which firm you're talking to. Some tend to be a little bit more conservative, some a little bit more forward thinking. Yeah, I think that you looked at the adoption of Copilot and ChatGPT, and it was, all right, it's not if developers are using this, it's they're using it. How do we make that a little bit more responsible, what have you, kind of supplement these existing tools with some security capabilities. From a sales perspective, to your point, like AI is everywhere now, but right now I think it's just noise. It's like saying you're a SaaS company or like you were on the internet 20 years ago. Of course you are.
Yeah.
And I think there's always, anytime there's new technology, there's this desire to talk about the tech, and that's quickly just going to become noise. But I think when you can talk about the experience that's enabled by the technology, that's much more interesting and I think much more exciting. And certainly for sellers, they're like, oh, this is pretty game changing. This is, a paradigm shift. This is, we're doing things that weren't possible before and they're hugely valuable. I think that's exciting. Anytime things resonate with the market, sellers just grab onto stuff like that. If something works, sellers will use it.
No, that's great. Yeah, it's anything sales will salivate over is always good stuff because then you get front and center.
I feel like that's why you got to be like careful with your roadmap and stuff. It's like they'll sell futures or it'll delay deals or whatnot.
Yes. But no. You got, I feel like it's a alert for everyone, and do not oversell the roadmap for too long. You have to deliver at some point in time. It's one of the things I've noticed in some other organizations I've been in is some companies are now posting their roadmap online and very clear and transparent. Like the next 2 years, this is what we're delivering. And I'm like, well, that's going to keep someone honest pretty good.
I feel like Microsoft would use their roadmap or use visionary things in order to like paralyze markets. It would be like, oh, well, Microsoft might be doing something. Or, I'm sure others do this as well, but like, working in the past for kind of small startups, it was, oh, Microsoft might do something that competes with us. Honestly, they never delivered anything in that scenario, but it would hold up deals because people were like, oh, we have Microsoft. They might do this.
Yeah. All right, so we got some pre-launch stuff. You pre-brief, you go through that, and then can you tell me more, like anything else specifically from the virtual launch itself? Because there's always a pro and a con for doing something virtual, right? And getting people like virtual butts in seat versus, hey, come on, let's have a steak dinner and some drinks or whatever it may be in a location. There's pros and cons to both, but can you take us through a little bit of the decision for doing a virtual event and how that played out? Tell us a little bit more about how you attracted people maybe and what was the response based on that?
Yeah, the decision to do the virtual event. So we knew we wanted to launch it around RSA, which is this big kind of cybersecurity conference. And we wanted to drive awareness and interest ahead of that event. So we decided we were already doing kind of a press release a week before, but we were like, why not do a virtual event? Why not tell our story? So we put out like teasers. We had this whole teaser campaign. It wasn't hard to figure out what we were launching, but we didn't officially announce it. I think it was like the Futuristics or something like that. Like there was just so much desire and interest in AI at the time that like that teaser campaign for the virtual event did really well. I think it was like by far and away our best attended event. And then the event itself, there was a presentation, we had a short demo, And then that kind of led to interest at the actual in-person event. As far as steak dinners and launches like that, I mean, that's for the sellers and other people. I'm more the production product marketing. So.
Tell me on like the one thing I'm curious on, like that you said that the teaser before the launch was like a good drive or to the virtual event. Am I getting that right? What was that teaser?
Yeah, I think we put out some thought leadership pieces around the role of AI in software development and secure software development. Then we ran an ad campaign promoting the virtual event with some good graphics, that kind of futuristic, somewhat intriguing tagline, what have you. So yeah, and then that fed to the virtual event where we announced the product.
Got it. So okay, good marketing and
yeah,
lean visuals.
Like the ideal scenario would be like if you have an early access customer to do that launch event with, which when I think of the best launches I've done in my career, those are the ones where it's like, all right, we're going to do an event with an early access customer who has real outcomes and they're going to talk about them and like, let's do it. So that's if I think of like ideal scenario launch, what it looks like.
100%. It's gold. It's a part of getting the early product or the MVP, the minimum viable product, in the hands of customers and getting them to align to ensure that, hey, they're going to want to be spokespeople and or they're giving feedback for it. Spokespeople is like the nirvana you want them to get to. But just that customer feedback and interaction so that you can actually then, when you put out a press release, hey, my gosh, customer XYZ is a part of this. That's money, right? So totally get it. Okay, so moving on to, all right, thing you launched, RSA, yay, everyone's happy, salespeople out there selling stuff, right? Anything you can say about after launch? Any other follow-on events or things that you were like, things that maybe stood out for you as being really good or even challenging? Man, this didn't work out.
Yeah, there was like follow-on events, Black Hats, the like next cybersecurity event in the summer. So we sustained momentum through that. We're really focused on expand opportunities. It was a prerequisite that you had to be a customer, use the core technology in order to take advantage. So that was the immediate pipeline converting opportunity, was expand. So I did quite a bit of customer marketing around that. And then weaving it into demand gen campaigns. That's a whole process that product marketing supports and provides content for that. But it involves more than product marketing for sure.
Yeah, no, totally get it. So moving on here is like one of the things I did want to talk to you about a little bit. And I think it's something interesting when you ask product marketers and the companies, and every company does a little bit different, but like, how do you measure results? And measure results from a standpoint of something that's real. Like I've been at companies before where people reported on, they had a color code and it was like red to green. And then there was like, and that's fine because that simplifies. Like, hey, I'm doing well, it's green, or hey, it's not so good, it's red. And it would light a fire as needed. Can get a whole nother subject on that. But at the end of the day though, what were the numbers behind that? So not just, hey, it feels good today, or So can you tell me more, anything around metrics, whether it be on the launch itself or in general, and as you as a product marketer, things that you align around?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of times as kind of content creators, a lot of the metrics come down to what's the engagement with the content that we're creating or the launch that we're doing against industry benchmarks or the own company's benchmarks. Are we generating more traffic? Is that traffic converting into leads? And are those leads going through the funnel? I think that's high level metrics. I think, broad stroke, I think is this launch helping the organization to grow faster than the market, the average? Are we outpacing other industries? And I think part of the challenge with product marketing metrics is we've influenced a lot of different things. We influence demand gen campaigns. We influence sales. How good's the pitch? How good are the materials? Are they equipped to progress people through that pipeline? But pinning down to like, all right, this is the product marketing specific metric. I think often in my experience, it's become, all right, what kind of engagement are we getting? Because it's tough to be like, all right, product marketing helps generate this pipeline or tie to pipeline or revenue. I think it's challenging. That would be like, all right, this launch or feature, especially with it's like not a tier one feature or launch, figure out, all right, what's the impact of that can be challenging.
Yeah.
I think less so with like PLG stuff. Like that's a whole different world with enterprise, with product-led growth stuff.
Yeah, and product-led growth strategies and you align directly. Sometimes product marketer plays the role of the salesperson in many ways,
Right,
with
right.
product management, or even product management who says, "Hey, we can do this on our own." All good. I think one of the challenges, and challenges I've faced as well throughout my history, is how do you show results or on perception, right? When you put out a launch, right? What are some of those key things that really say, "Hey, wow, you moved the needle"? If you're a demand gen person, hey, no worries. Like, how many qualified leads do we get? How do they convert? Blah, blah, blah. If you're a digital person, and this is somewhere marketing's in there too as well. I don't advocate for taking goals on like website visits, but it's a good test to see, wow, did something work or not? But like, did Devin move the needle with this launch? And it's kind of, that's always a challenge, right? Is perception and awareness in market. And do you have any guidance on that or any opinions on how do you handle that?
Yeah, I think the previous launch as an example, like, yeah, we had a big uptick in web traffic, but it was also with an event where we see uptick in web traffic every year. So kind of you can pick out the correlations. Right? We launched something, we put out a PR, it had so much pickup that had this uptick in web traffic and what have you. I think like some of this stuff, it's easy. Sometimes it's easy to be like, all right, this is our top performing website. This is our top performing landing page. So these are the things that are generating interest. I think some of my thoughts on the metrics are, it's a lot of like retrospectively, did we do well? We want to show that we did well. It was worth the cost that we spent on this launch, or it was the right investment. Sometimes it's a little bit more challenging to be like, all right, what do we learn from this data? Are we going to invest more in this area? Do we learn that this type of content performs better for this audience? I find that a lot of times it's just retrospective, like what worked, and you got to take the next step to be like, all right, how is this going to influence what we do in the future?
Yeah, no, you bring up a great point, and it gets back to the whole ICP or even a persona, right? Is what's the right content for the right person at the right point in time, right? And is it resonating, right? And resonating, and resigning now, resigning from this webpage. I'm out of here. Bye. And I think historically people will look at it and be like, backing up. I think historically people don't look at it enough, and we don't study enough the actual content that's in market and making sure that, I don't know, my pet peeve is ebooks, right? People will spend all these time and day on ebooks, right? And, oh, look at this, great, some third party created it. No one's reading the darn ebook, right? Why the heck, how much money did you spend to have someone else pay? And it's like, we need to be really focused on what the customer wants. I'm getting on my pedestal now with this, but we really need to make sure that customers want what's put out in market, and then study that and making sure that we're helping at least educate them or helping them solve their problem. We're the custodians of the word where we need to go do that. So that's just my take on some of that with when you bring up content and putting it the right place at the right time. Yeah, I think there's a level of art and science to some of this. The science, we can track things, but the art is, what do we want to track? And how do we know? For me personally, I think where I fall into it is, go ask a customer, go and start there. Get a good, all right, I talked to 3 customers and they all said that the content was great or it sucked, and this is why, right? And that gives you a good starting point. You need to go then in mass. The world's not solved by 3 customers, but it was super important for that to be a driver to your next action to check out.
Yeah, very good point.
All right, let's talk about this. All things with launch, whatever, is there anything like backing away that you wish you would have changed or that you would have done differently, or even said, even for a role that maybe wasn't yours as a part of it, man, what would you do differently, or say, hey, time out, you guys should have done this? Or
I mean, I think I mentioned like ideal launches with the customer. You always want, you always have that as part of your kind of wish list. So there's things that could have done differently or wish we had done. Follow-on campaigns, kind of coordination with, I think there was a lot of other priorities. I think very quickly the organization realized like, oh, this is what people are excited and talking and care about. I think that it took a little while, maybe a little bit longer than hoped to get there. Yeah, because I think I mentioned there's a narrow window of opportunity, especially when you get to be first to market. So we capitalized on that. Did we maximize it? Absolutely not. There are definitely things we could have done to really capture that moment in time and sustain it better for sure.
yeah, like everything's 2020 in hindsight, right?
Right.
But you got to learn from it. If you don't learn from it to make that next one better. Look, I'm with you on that. I think about many of the launches back when I was younger and even bringing products to market and how much money we left on the table by not really maximizing. Yeah. And no, I'll throw this bone out there to all of my partner marketing friends. But a lot of times people do not pre-brief the partners, and many organizations are like an extension of the sales force. And they're out there selling, they got better stories. They're clamoring for this content. And unless you can get that partner involved, man, a lot of people forget about it and it gets lost.
Yeah, I've had the benefit of having really good partner marketing leaders to work with, which, yeah, absolutely. They are more than a force multiplier. Yeah. And they've got a lot of companies that they're selling. If you're not providing value to them, ideally you're bringing customers to them as much as they are to you. But yeah, being high on their radar is key.
All right, like we close up here. We had a good conversation, walk through launch and kind of the AI, the step into it, I would say, but like some pros and cons, a quick overview on where you've been and throughout your journey. Let's assume someone here is listening and is like, man, I'd love to do what Devin does. And maybe, do you have any recommendations for maybe as a part of your origin story, but what you would recommend for new folks to marketing or new folks into even the product, any of the sphere? What do you recommend for them to get involved, to take that next step?
Yeah, I highly recommend product marketing. I think it's a really cool position. We get to work across product marketing and sales. I think having a really solid communication foundation, being a good writer, I think that's what we do, a lot of content creation and understanding how to tell a story and connect with audiences. I think that's a pretty key foundation. The other thing I'd say is just be curious and interested in your industry, become a subject matter expert. Take the time to really go deep. If you're going to be educating the market and your company, you have to take the time to educate yourself as well. And there are so many free resources. Whatever industry you're in, software security, cybersecurity is pretty complex. There's a lot to learn.
Yeah,
but it's a steep learning curve. But I feel like all industries feel that way. It might be more true for cybersecurity, but like in consulting, one of the things I liked the most was I got to go really deep in a lot of different industries, and it's fun. Yeah.
No, that's great. Yeah, and just to back you up on that cyber, I spent most of my time in databases, cloud, and things like that. And yeah, sure, you had to stay on top of it. Yeah, you had new microservice architectures, new databases coming out, new services coming out. Cyber, nothing is like cyber. Cyber is like that, but also threat actors coming in and finding new ways to circumvent anything you're putting together. And I always felt it challenging because no one knew the true story. It was like just digging through and really getting an understanding of what's happening, why is it happening? And not to belabor it, but one of the biggest challenges sometimes in product marketing is depending how you're staffed and how you're ready for it, is a reaction to the market, a reaction to something going on. And the ability, like when something negative happens, and it could be around the holiday season, and then all of a sudden you have to put out a corporate press release, and because someone hacked the system, holy God, right? That was the stuff that was, there was energy to it, but gosh, that stuff was hard. That's the kind of stuff where all hands on deck. And unless you build, just my opinion, unless you build a kind of a strategy to handle it and a little bit of discipline, but also I would say building a culture that can handle that and be prepared for it and to leverage it for your advantage rather than just reacting. That's where goodness sets in. And that's one of those things you talk about learning throughout the years. That's one of those things, even today, I'm still trying to get better at. And that's where you have to stay on top of the market, stay at top of your industry, and be prepared for those unknowns and be ready to write and type, right?
Sure. Hopefully not too often, but sure.
Yeah, right. Otherwise you go bald like me. Hey, it's been great talking. Like real quick, like just to get a little human here. I like to do this at the end. We talked shop, we talked through marketing, everything like that. But tell us a little bit about maybe what you're doing right now. Can you recommend, I don't know, like a book or an album, a movie, show, a game, whatever it may be? Like, what do you do in your free time right now? Or is it, what are you watching? What are you listening to? What are you playing?
All right. Free time. So I don't know. Do you know what Libby is? It's like a free app for library audiobooks and ebooks. All right. I don't know if it's just I don't think it's just a New England thing. But I listen to a lot of audiobooks. Like I walk the dog, and I'm one of those like 3x speed type of people. I burn through audiobooks. Most of what I listen to is like mostly for entertainment, all for entertainment, really. Get some like sci-fi and some fantasy stuff in there. And then, recommendations. The Greenbone Saga by like Fonda Lee gets not enough attention, and I think it should get more. It's really good.
Cool.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Awesome. Yeah, I do the audiobooks too. Like I always wait I use Audible as an ex-Amazon person, but it's one of those things where I don't commute into the city anymore. So like it's all dog walking. When these books are 28 hours, holy gosh, I like start losing.
You got to put it on 3x, man.
I know. I started doing that, and then but I'm with you though. It's mine are trying to listen to. It was for me, part of it was cyber. It was definitely a part of it, and trying to learn a little bit more historical, but also a little bit more self-help, but time management, things like that, right? Where it's how do you maximize your day, maximize your health, things like, I don't know, things I need to be doing a little bit more of.
For you.
All good. Hey, Devin, thank you so much for coming today and be a part of this pilot podcast here. Great conversation. Real quick, before we leave you, hey, if listeners, man, they heard you and they want to ask you a question, they want to reach out to you, like where's the best place for them to find you if you're willing to share?
They can track me down somehow on LinkedIn. That's my only social media. Someday I'll get a picture on there. I'm one of the anonymous silhouettes, but maybe by the time this comes out, I'll get a picture up there.
I'll take a screenshot. I'll send it over to you. You got to be forced to put on your page.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I'll use this.
All good. I'll put the link in the show notes too as well, and you start getting some spam. Maybe get some more cyber activity with it. No.
But anyone that I love talking product marketing. So reach out, ask questions, connect, whatever.
Awesome. Thank you, Devin. Thank you for being here. Any questions? Any desire for product marketing? Go fill up his inbox and ask those questions. If not, come talk to us. Thank you again for being here on the Launch Gravy podcast. Thanks again, Devin. We'll talk to you later.